Hey everyone, so glad to be with you again on Novelists Unwind. I'm Johnnie Alexander and I'm here with Susie Finkbeiner, who is a CBA best-selling author. And we're going to be talking about her writing journey and also about her latest book, All Manner of Things, which is a historic novel. Susie, so glad to have you here today. Thank you for being with me.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, me too. It's always just so fun to talk to authors about their writing journeys and how they come up with the stories and all that kind of thing. So one thing that intrigued me about All Manner of Things, and first let's go ahead and show the book. As Susie and I are recording this, beautiful, beautiful cover. It's not out yet, so I haven't had a chance to read it, but by the time you're viewing this, it will be out, so you'll be able to get it on Amazon or, Barnes & Noble, wherever you want to buy your books. All Manner of Things. It is a historical novel, but it's set in sort of a different era than we usually think of for historical novels. So tell us a little bit about that and how that came about.
Well, All Manner of Things begins in the early summer of 1967, which is abnormal for historical. And I haven't read a lot of novels set in that time. It is the story of Annie Jacobson and her family. And it revolves around the Vietnam War and some of the cultural changes that were going on at the time. Really, it's a family story. It's a story about this family that I really came to love as I wrote it. The reason I chose the 60s is because when I was a little girl, I remember, when you snoop through your parents' things.
Yes. I love that.
And I found an airmail envelope, and I knew it was from Vietnam when my dad was in Vietnam. I didn't read it. But it kind of settled in my mind, this whole idea of soldiers writing home and what it must have been like for the families who were still here. And things were different then, it was harder to communicate. You didn't have the 24-hour news cycle. And so they really depended on these letters. And that's really where this novel was born. And I was trolling through some used books one day, and I found a book called Dear America. And it is a collection of letters home from boys who were in Vietnam. And there were a lot of heartbreaking letters. There were some funny ones. The whole spectrum. And I thought, I need to write this novel.
Oh, wow. Wow. And the Vietnam War, I think it's still just so, I was young during all that time. I mean, I don't think you were probably even born yet, but, it's like so I was looking through your website, and some of the stuff was like I was really tickled about that I saw on there, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But so I was just like a little bit too young to understand all of that was going on, and I didn't have older brothers that were there. But it's like the World War II vets were always just considered heroes, and the Vietnam vets, they just came back to a whole different thing. Now, is that part of what you have to do in your story, or was your story before all of that?
Well, 1967 is when a lot of the war protests back home really started to heat up.
Okay.
And so in one of the letters, my character's brother, Mike, writes home and says, tell them to knock it off because of how demoralizing it was to the soldier.
Sure.
And actually, the Viet Cong famously used the war protests in Washington, D.C., New York City, and such against our soldiers to kind of demoralize them and say, your people are not on your side.
Yeah,
and against them. And then I do have a veteran or a young man named Walt Vanderlaan, who is in the same little small town. He comes home from Vietnam, and his experience is tortured. He's got, not because necessarily of the people in the town, but because of what he experienced when he was in Vietnam and not being able to have resources to find help.
Oh, that's sad. That's hard. I think it's a really difficult era to write about, just because of all the things that were going on in such upheaval. But so it's so interesting to me that you tackled it and seemed to tackle it in a very good way from what I've read about the story. Yeah, I love where you said that you only mentioned hippies a couple times.
Right. When my mom, I told my mom, I said, because my mom and I talk about my writing quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to write a 60s book. And she said, well, we weren't all hippies, right? I said, oh, I know. And since it's set in small town West Michigan, there weren't a lot of hippies. And I actually interviewed my friend Nancy Marchinowski, who lived in West Michigan in the 1960s. And she said, we heard about them. And when I went to MSU, I saw them, but they didn't come to our town. And while hippie culture is interesting, it wasn't everything. And I think the hippies get more attention than just the average Joe. And so I give more attention to what it was like for normal people. Sorry, if you're a hippie. I'm sure you're fantastic.
No, I mean, I did wear bell-bottom pants. I mean, I remember, I had my bell-bottoms and that, but no, I grew up in a farming community in Southern Ohio, Central Ohio, and no, we did not see many hippies either. I mean, some of my cousins, they started wearing their hair really long and that kind of thing, but it was just like we were all hippie wannabes probably, but not really.
Well, in the 90s, I went through a hippie phase, so
it's kind of fun, right?
It's fun, yeah.
One thing a couple things that I was reading about your story and in your press materials, that kind of stuff, and I didn't know this. Now the story is set in West Michigan, which is where you're from, where you live, but there was just this one little line about a unique Dutch community. So that was intriguing to me. So it's like, okay, well, what's unique about this Dutch community, and how does that play a part in your story? So
yeah, if anyone spends any amount of time in West Michigan, particularly from in Holland, Michigan, which
of course,
right there,
yeah.
If you spend any amount of time there, you will see a lot of extremely tall, extremely blonde people.
Wow.
And in West Michigan, we have a very lively, active, proud Dutch culture. And I am not Dutch, even though people think I am. I'm German and English. Every year they have a tulip festival where people dress up in their like vintage Dutch clothes from the old country, and they do wear wooden shoes. And if you're not careful, you will get hit in the head because they fly off if they're dancing. We have Dutch markets everywhere. One is, I think it's called Veenstra's, that I go to sometimes to get mints and cheese.
Okay.
And most of my friends around here are Dutch, at least a little bit. And so learning about the Dutch culture in West Michigan was so much fun. They have a strong sense of family. They're some of the most generous people I've ever met. And they are just amazing. And so I really wanted to honor that. And I had the opportunity of interviewing 3 generations of a Dutch family, the Pippings, and sitting with the Oma, the grandma, who immigrated in 1946 from the Netherlands.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right after the war. So, wow.
Yeah, and so her, and then talking to her children about what it meant to grow up first generation and not learn how to speak English until kindergarten. And then my friend, the granddaughter, talking about how it is now. And it was such a rich experience. And they basically told me I was part of their family, which I'm totally fine with. And all the Dutch cookies and coffee and mints. It's a great culture.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. It kind of makes me think of a picture I saw of you on your website, which is just, it's really nice. You do want to check out Susie's website. And there's a picture of you, like there's a railroad track in the background, and you've got a dress on, and it's got all these birds on it. And I mean, that looks kind of Dutch to me. But then you've also got a denim jacket and pink tennis shoes. I was smiling. It was just like, this is an adorable picture. So you just kind of got your own style going on there.
I'm the youngest of four, so anything I can do for attention. But that picture is interesting because, number one, I heard after I put it up that it's not necessarily legal to have a picture taken on the railroad track. So,
Oh,
but
oh,
what they can't track me down. So then there's another picture from that same photo shoot where I'm making, and excuse my face, I'm doing this because there were groundhogs all behind my photographer, and I was like, watch out. Because I'm a city girl. I don't know if groundhogs eat people. I don't know what they do.
But I'm a farm girl. They don't eat people, but they can be big, and they, I mean, if, yeah, you wouldn't, they usually are afraid though, so they don't, yeah,
But city gophers might be worse, right?
they might be worse.
I don't even know. I don't.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm surprised you were seeing them, because usually they kind of hide away, you know. And, yeah, so yeah, those were brave gophers.
They were so scary.
Oh my gosh! Well, they are cute, and the photos I saw were really, they were really cute, and I love that. I love that outfit. That's adorable.
That is my favorite dress. Whenever I need to feel like injected with confidence, I wear my bird dress.
Yeah, and that's what I called it. I wrote bird dress on my notes, but it was so cute.
I was at a writers' conference, and then I heard someone say, "Hey, have you seen the bird lady?" And I was like, oh, that's me.
Oh, that's cute. That's cute. Well, I want to show, I mean, gosh, we could just probably talk forever. So I got on my Kindle, as I told you this morning. I'm reading My Mother's Chamomile. So I want to show this book too. This is one of, if I can get it to look good, this is one of Susie's earlier stories. Is it your first or second?
Second.
Second.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I haven't had a chance to read All Manner of Things yet, I've been reading this one, and it's just wonderfully written. And one of the characters is Olga, and she it's written in first person, and Olga just has this wonderful voice. I mean, you could just feel like you're actually in this woman's presence listening to her talk, because of her syntax and her diction and her word choice, and there's just so much energy and personality there. So tell us about Olga in My Mother's Chamomile.
Well, first of all, thank you for reading that particular one. That is a story that is really close to my heart.
Oh.
And it hasn't gotten picked up very often. So I really appreciate you reading.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you. Olga is actually a character who is based on two of my great aunts, my great aunt Bertha and my great aunt Olga, who are sisters.
Oh.
And my grandpa's sisters. And I grew up with them in this teeny tiny church. And I spent my childhood listening to them and really looking up to them. And they're the two grandmotherly type ladies who, when I think of a woman who has lived a faithful life in confidence in Jesus Christ and wanting to love people deeply, it's those two. And so I combined them into one, and that book has such meaning to me, and that's one of the reasons.
Oh, I could see that. And yeah, definitely the voice is just so strong. I mean, it even just starts out, all she's doing is putting her husband's laundry away, but yet, so it's just this menial household task, and yet it's like, she loves her husband, I mean, it was just fabulous. So I wish I'm on deadline right now. Otherwise I would be just sitting here reading this book.
I totally understand.
You get that. Yeah, you get that. All right. Okay, so I was looking at your website and your blog, and you've got these posts, hashtag FBF, and I'm sorry, I don't know for sure what FBF stands for.
Flashback Friday.
Flashback Friday. I was thinking something like that, but I wasn't sure. So hashtag FBF, Flashback Friday. And it's wonderful because there's all these 60s related posts. So, it's a wonderful way to use your research and your blog posts. And so one, of course, was the TV shows. And I'm thinking, oh, gosh, I remember I was little, but, I remember Batman was actually one of my favorite shows my mom tells me.
It's funny.
Yeah, it is. And I was probably 7, 8 years old, but yeah, I loved it. But the one that got me laughing was the blog post about, what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I do.
The Jell-O.
I hope that you understand how many people talk about that one.
That was crazy. So people, I had to put a link because you've got to go look at the Jell-O salads. My mom did not do that. Now, she would put fruit in it, but no, we never ate it.
There are certain things that are permissible in Jell-O. Fruit, some cottage cheese, some, but it has to be like the right combination. But I'm no fan of Jell-O. So to, first of all, see Jell-O that already I just don't really care for. And then to see salmon, actual salmon in the Jell-O, it was.
And olives, and but the one that really got me was the turkey. And actually, that's when I had to stop. I could not. I was like, oh, I'm done.
I should have put a gag warning on it. I actually talked to my friend Denise, who is of that generation. She was a teen in the 60s. And she said, well, Susie, they weren't necessarily for eating. They were more for looks. And she said, we didn't have Instagram and Pinterest. We had Jell-O molds. And that made so much sense to me because culinary beauty was really important, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That was crazy. So yeah, I'll put a link to that in
and everyone watching, gag warning. Just
yes, gag warning.
Don't look at it before or after eating.
No. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm glad that fad has sort of gone away.
I hope it doesn't swing back around like some things do.
No, we don't want that. We don't want that one. Well, let's just talk a couple minutes about your writing journey. So, My Mother's Chamomile was your second book, and how long did it take you to become a published author? It's like that's a really, that can be such a hard, long track. Was it for you or not?
It was. When I was in high school, was probably the first time someone said, "You're good at this." And my English teachers, Sharon Somerville and Belinda Lund, they saw it in me.
Oh, nice.
They didn't let me make excuses for not doing it. And then in college, my professor, George Brown, was another one who said, this short story is not a short story, it's a chapter. Like build up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And having people like that in my life made a huge difference. I also come from a long line of artsy people. My dad's an author, and we've got poets, we've got painters, and photographers, all of this. We cannot do math, but we do art. So doing this was totally logical, and my family never questioned it. It was just, yeah, go for it, which I'm very fortunate. And my husband, I remember my husband saying, it's not every day that someone has a dream and one that they can pursue. So go after it.
Nice. That's great.
It is great. And my first thing I ever had published was a play that I wrote for church.
Wow.
And so that's a fun fact.
Yeah.
And then I started writing a novel thinking, this is never going to go anywhere. It's just something for me. And then after I finished it, I thought, I put all that work into this.
Yeah.
I need to see if anybody wants to read it. And I had quite a few rejections. It was a first novel. I didn't know what I was doing when I wrote it. Because you can read blogs and books all day long, but really the way to learn how to write a novel is to write it.
I totally agree with that. I felt the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so after all these rejections, I put it away and I said, well, maybe the first novel isn't going to sell, and that's okay. So then I went to my blog, and I was kind of in between projects, and I said to my readers, let's do a fun challenge where you give me a main character, a setting, and a conflict, and I will write a 1,000 to 1,500 word short story about it. And I said, I'll do them all in September. And I thought I'd get 4, and I got 31.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
With little tiny toddlers in the house, I wrote 31 short stories in the month of September, and I learned so much about writing.
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy. There was a lot of caffeine consumed.
I would guess. Well, no, because that's more than one a day. That's,
yes.
Yeah. Wow.
It was a little nutso. But then an acquisitions editor contacted me after the challenge was over and said, when your novel's ready, I would like to see it.
Nice.
So that was Dina Sleeman at Whitefire.
Okay.
And they published my first 2. And then after that, I wanted to write a Dust Bowl novel. And I ran into the secretary at my kid's school who said, my husband's interested in your books. And I said, well, that's weird. Who is your husband? And he was the publisher for Kriegel. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I think part of it has been God setting up different opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And another part of it has been trusting God enough to put myself out there.
Yeah.
And be obedient when he said, right.
Exactly.
And then this with Ravel has happened pretty organically, and it's been a really great opportunity.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Because Ravel's just great. I mean, I love them. So, yeah.
They're the nicest. I mean, I've not had a bad experience in publishing. I've had some of the most talented editors who are careful with my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And totally busted the whole stereotype of editors.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I just am thankful for every single editor I've had on whatever project, because they all just bring something so wonderful to that. And, some are better than others, but, it's still just, I love getting my edited projects back and seeing what they have to say and then working through them again. That's just like a fun part of the whole process, I think.
Well, because they want to help you get better.
Yeah,
they do. It's not that they're trying to be mean. They want to work with you to put out the best possible story.
Absolutely.
And honestly, they make you look so much smarter.
Yeah, they do. And they see things that you didn't realize, that you've got these, because you know your character so well and you have these preconceived ideas and you don't realize that never made it to the page, like, because it was like, she'll say, well, why this? It's like, well, isn't it obvious? And it's like, well, no, I guess it really wasn't. It was obvious to me in my head, but no, it wasn't really out there. So.
Were there times when I write something and it's so important, it sneaks its way in 4 times.
Yes.
And somehow, even through my obsessive reading through, I don't catch that.
You don't catch it. No. Yeah. I understand that too. That's great. That's great. Well, you say your favorite social media is Instagram. So we want to make sure people know that and to follow you there. And then just one last question before I let you go. This has been a lot of fun talking about your stories and just getting to know you. when you're all done with the project, totally finished, hit the end, what do you do to unwind?
Oh, I'm so close to that. I have a deadline in 13 days, I think. Not that I'm counting.
Is that June 1st? That's when my deadline is. Yeah.
Maybe that's why we're so relieved not to be working.
Maybe so.
I am looking forward to taking the summer off from writing and just hanging with my kids. And then I read like a glutton. I just read as much as I can. I might pick a TV series to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched TV in a while, and you know what? I cannot wait to paint my nails.
Oh, I love that answer. No one has ever said that. I love that.
Well, because if I paint my nails and then I start typing, it's gonna mess them up.
Yeah, just chips. Oh, that's cute. And I know too that you read widely. I've read from different things I picked up on your blog, and I think a couple other places that you read outside of inspirational fiction. You read quite and I do too. I mean, I'm actually reading Moby Dick right now. I mean, I've been reading it for like 5 weeks. It's so hard to get through.
I've never attempted. Ironically, in college, I used my copy of Moby Dick to hold up the light for my fish tank. That's about all it served. You want to know something that freaks out my editor?
What?
I don't read the back of books.
I saw that. Yeah. You're probably the only person I know that does not read the back of books.
Yeah. I don't like to know anything, which sometimes ends up getting me into books that I'm like, whoa. And then those go back.
Yeah.
But I've also found some real treasures that I probably would not have read.
Right. I think that's really cool. I mean, I don't know that I could do that, but I think it's really cool you do that. And I think it's really cool you read. Yeah, no, I think it's really cool you read outside of inspirational fiction, because I think we can get so locked into that. And there are tons of good stories out there. I mean, lots of great stories, actually. So that's cool. That's cool. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go, but thank you, Susie, so much. And for those of you who are watching, we really appreciate it. We hope you'll pick up a copy of Susie's book, All Manner of Things. Can you show us the cover one more time? Yes. There we go. Yeah, you'll want to get that. A historical novel set in an era that we don't have that many historical novels about, really, at least I don't think in the inspirational market. So you'll want to get that. And thank you, and see you next time on Novelists Unwind. Bye bye.